Tires, brakes, suspension, and RV life. What's under your RV matters a lot more than you think. Welcome to Learn to RV, the podcast. Today's a really special episode. Tasha and I are joined by an extra co-host tonight. And so this is Rick Steelman. You've met him by a picture previously, but tonight he's here in real life.
Good picture, mind you.
All right, so let me ask you something. When's the last time either one of you thought about what was under your RV?
Under my RV, I don't think, well, that we are in a wildlife area, so then, yeah, I do think about that. Otherwise, no, not really. So pray tell, Jen, please tell me why I should think about what's under my RV.
Well, we're going to talk about tires and brakes and suspensions and a little thing known as TPMS. And if you don't know yet what that means, that's a tire pressure monitoring system, and they're super important. And I know this isn't like the fun side of RV life. It's not sunsets, campfires, or even the critters that are following you around under your RV. If you're Tasha, you might be Cinderella and, no, she doesn't feed them. Anyway, but it is the side that gets us to the destination safely and gets you home. So, we're going to talk about things like blowouts. Do they happen out of nowhere? Or is there some telltale signs that we can find in terms of that? Is it poor suspension? Do you know what poor suspension might even look like? And so this episode is great if you've ever said, oh, I'll look at that later. And so let's look at that today. So we got Rick Steelman joining us as a guest co-host tonight. He works closely with one of the leading TPMS solutions in the RV space. So he's going to bring some real insight to this conversation tonight. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. If you've never heard of TPMS, stay tuned. We're going to catch that a little later in the episode. But TPMS is such an integral part of making sure your RV is roadworthy. And then we're going to get some expert perspective from Tommy Henderson over at Henderson's Lineup. We're going to cut away for that interview. It's a very short interview. He has a Beyond the Brand series launching on Wednesday. So just 2 days from the day that this airs, you'll be able to see that spot too. So you'll get to learn all about Henderson's Lineup and what they bring to the RV space. All right. So let's dive in, because this is one of those conversations that can help people prevent a whole lot of problems down the road. So what is on the bottom of your RV does tend to matter a lot more than people actually realize. So I have 4 questions, and I'm going to have you kind of flip-flop who takes these. Why do you think RV tires are so important?
Well, obviously, it's the only thing between you and life and the road, realistically. So, when they blow out or when, things happen, yeah, you can check it beforehand, but you can't check it during. That's obviously where a TPMS, comes into play. And again, we'll talk about what that means a little later. But, it's so important to check your tires on a regular basis, specifically before you start your trip. Checking the tread, make sure you have enough pressure. But really, the thing that people have a hard time checking is really the temperature issue. And I know I've had blowouts prior to having a TPMS in Texas, hot day, hot road, and all of a sudden it blew out, and I didn't even know what happened. We didn't find out for about 20 miles. People past us didn't tell us until finally someone told us about it.
What? Are
Yep.
you serious?
I'm totally serious.
How does that even happen?
Well, it was on the second, it was when we had the travel trailer. It was on the back axle, not the front axle. And we heard something, but I didn't feel it at all when I was driving. And, that's one of the benefits of having, dual axle. It was, but man, the damage it caused was, it was a lot of damage.
Oh, all right.
It's funny. I just did a seminar a couple of weeks ago, and I started off with videos of blowouts. And, it was to warn people, or kind of just to tell people, to get them in the frame of mind that you could be driving. And again, all of a sudden this happens. But there was another time actually on the other side about a year later. And I did feel at that time, thankfully it was no problem, but I was in a construction zone and I couldn't get off for 10 miles.
Gosh. Well, and Tasha, you just bought a brand new rig brand new to you rig. But the one thing the inspector did point out very quickly was that it needed how many new tires?
All of them. All the new tires. All. I had to replace all of the tires on our RV because the RV is a 2018 and it had all of the original tires from the manufacturer on the rig. They had never been changed.
Wow.
Yes.
Yep.
So, and we actually just got we took all of the tires that Discount Tire had in our size, and they did not have enough to get our spare. So we just took our spare and got it done at a different Discount Tire. So we are now full up, all new tires.
That's fantastic. You know, but
Yes.
a lot of people don't even think about that. And the inspector called it, like, as soon as he saw it, he said, you shouldn't drive a mile on these. And I happen to know the inspector. And so, you know, tires are one thing, and tires, like, we're going to get all into TPMS systems and why they're so important. But how often should RV brakes be inspected? What do you guys think? This is just a guess. I have all of this lined out later, but I just want
So
to
you
see
already know
what your
the
thought.
answer for this
I do.
one.
I do.
Okay, so I would say 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I would.
What do you think?
That's what I would think too. That would be my guess.
What about the suspension? Like, that's another problem that most people don't even think about until after they
Right.
have a hanger laying on, you know, in their leaf spring is upside down and it's not smiling anymore. How often should you check your suspension or upgrade your suspension?
Well, it depends upon what your suspension is, but if you have just the leaf spring and you have a fifth wheel or even a travel trailer, there's that old expression of every time, you guys know, it's an earthquake, right? Every time we move. And you hear about these frame flex and these other things, but realistically, the suspension to me is the culprit because obviously we all know the roads are not the greatest in the world, and when we're driving and we have no control over that. But you know, our new Brinkley, and not to give a plug for that, came with a really great suspension, and we have minimal problems. When we open it up and after parking, we don't see a whole lot of things moved, and I think it's because of that reason. They've got the shocks, the dual shocks on both sides, and the leaf spring.
And so there's an out of sight, out of mind attitude a lot of times when it comes to all the things on the bottom of your RV, you know, and like things like, you know, do you plug a tire? The answer in real life should be no, but you should have a good spare on hand in those situations because even most shops won't plug a tire on an RV tire. So there's lots of consequences that come with it. You talked about, you know, body damage and stuff like that. I still can't believe that you didn't feel it. I'm just saying. So and you knew better. So what would you say you overlooked in that situation?
Well, it was several years ago, and I didn't even think. We checked the tires, and we didn't really think that it would blow. I have a mechanic that regularly, at the time, inspected tires and my tires, and the tires were fine. But I just didn't think about blowout issues. And the blowout again is there's so many factors. There's the road, there's the temperature, there's the humidity, there's the altitude. And if you think about it, if you're going, let's say, even like in West Virginia, you're going up a mountain, you're going down a mountain, you're going up a mountain, you're going down a mountain. Well, yeah, but you're also hitting altitudes high and low. Same thing off the West Coast, whatever it is, and your tires are, getting hot, and then they're getting cold, and they're flexing, and they're supposed to, and you're supposed to. You have a gap basically, or a free range from where the cold average is on the tire. But but anything after a while is going to,
Absolutely. So the number one failure point on an RV is actually the tires. It actually is. It is. And so we load ratings versus actual weight that we're carrying, the tire age, like in Tasha's situation, heat, like you just said, is a huge enemy, but so is also underinflation.
Yep.
What
And
about a China?
overinflation.
What about a China bomb myth? How many of you have heard of a China bomb?
I just heard it. I do not remember what a China bomb is. I think I had it at a restaurant a few weeks ago.
So actually, a China bomb is
Or maybe it
actually
was
a
after the
certain
restaurant. Maybe that's what it was.
it's a certain type of tire that they were saying if you Salem tires was the brand that was known to be the China bomb. But I have had people that I know personally that have run those China bombs to test them. And if you run them at the exact load they're supposed to be at, they will last the 40,000 miles, which is interesting. But one of the things that is the biggest thing that nobody talks about is the fact that your tires are rated for a certain speed limit
And a certain weight.
and a certain weight. But how fast do you think your tires are rated for in most cases?
Well, mine,
Is that how fast you go?
I don't go more. I mean, occasionally I'll go up to 70, but that's not my thing. I set the cruise control at 65. The other reason is I'm also a cheap and I get the best gas mileage at 65.
Well,
But you
that's true
guys know
for
I'm
all of
cheap, so
us.
that's okay.
No, but I mean, that's true for all of us. We all get the best gas mileage when
Yeah.
we're going 65. And so, but how many times have you been on the highway and you just got passed like you were sitting still by a motorhome or a fifth wheel?
The time they're
My
always
wife,
going
Dawn,
faster than us.
complains about that because it's the only thing that really gets me upset is when I get passed and I'm going the speed limit. She just, I just can't take it. So yes, that happens a lot, and I think to myself, what kind of gas mileage are you getting? What you in a hurry for? Uh, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're really you're pushing the limits. Period. If somebody comes in front of you, because you got thousands of pounds behind you, or if you're a motorhome, and you know, stopping is going is easy. It's the stopping is the hard part.
Yeah. So I have 4 tire questions for you. So these are in situations where there's something wrong with the tire. So there are cracking sidewalls, dry rot. I can't even talk anymore. Dry rot. It must be the day, I swear.
Yeah.
Dry rot. Should you run on tires that have dry rot?
Of course not.
No.
That
No,
just
of
doesn't
course
even
not.
sound like a good time, even if you don't know what it is. I mean, no.
Well, dry rot is your tires. The rubber itself it's not it doesn't have its moisture anymore, and it's literally rotting from that, and it's peeling apart. And that's what dry rot is. And so, in fact, one of the things that we always recommend to people is, some people put the covers on the tires, but there's arguments about whether or not they breathe. But you want to make sure on a regular basis that you put Armor All or something like it to keep them moisturized.
Yep. All right. So what about a tire date code? Did you know your tires actually have an expiration date?
Yes, I do.
And so if you find it out, if you go to the last 4 digits of that, it'll tell you the week and the year that that tire was made and manufactured. And so you should be mindful of that. UV exposure could also make your tires degrade faster. So if you're in the hot sun in Arizona in the summertime, or if you're in Montana even in the summer, because the UV is much higher up there. If you're in the mountains, people don't think about that. What about mismatched tires? Say I blow a tire on my left driver's side. What should I do?
Well, obviously change it,
Grading out the
or get
opposite.
Frank to change it, because I don't know if you're going to change it. So, but my rule of thumb has always been that if you do one, you should really do the other, and look, because and that's also important, is that you get the same type of tire, generally the same brand and the same rating, to make sure that they wear evenly.
The real question is, do you have a TPMS on your system?
Well, yes, I do.
And Tasha, do you have one?
We do.
Because if not, I could tell you where you can get one.
So let's start with Tasha. Tasha, what brand of TPMS do you have?
We actually have the brand that Rick is going to talk to us about today.
Awesome. Me too.
Yes.
It is number one. It is the gold standard.
Yeah. And that's why we got it. Before we went on the road, I did a lot of research. I wanted to make sure that we didn't know what we were doing. So I needed something that knew what it was doing before we hit the road. So that's what we got. And it has saved our butts quite a few times.
I mean, just last year alone, our TPMS saved us 3 times. So 3 separate times. And while I have an anxiety attack every time the stupid thing starts beeping at me and the whole car goes into straight up panic mode, I can tell you last year when we were going to Asheville, we were leaving Asheville, North Carolina, and we were going down the mountain and it starts beeping. And we were coming across, and Frank like immediately sprung into action. Like he's like Marine Corps on So everybody out of the car, blah, blah, blah. We heard this whistle.
Hopefully he stopped first.
He did stop. And so,
Okay,
but
that's important.
before the whole tire had drained, because it was literally like a leak.
Yep.
And it was on the
Gas
front.
leak?
It was a leak on the front passenger side tire on the truck. And so it wasn't on the RV, but it was on the truck. And we still had, I don't know, 150 miles to go that day. But he quickly jumped into gear and had it off and elevated high enough so that by the time it lost all its air, it could still have the other tire put back on. And so, like, that's what TPMS, one of the things TPMS can do. But the real difference in the brands is how soon it tells you those things. So can we talk a little bit about specifically which brand of TPMS the three of us have? And let's talk about how much closer that monitoring system is than, we're not going to name any other brands, but some other brands don't have the same type of accuracy. And so I'd like to dive into both of those things.
Okay, so again, we are that distributor for that brand. Can I name that? Should I name that brand?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's TST. It is considered again the gold standard in TPMS, or tire pressure management system. What makes it, I think, so much better? Number one, they were one of the first ones out there for this. The company that they are part of is focused on the commercial side of it in transportation. So a lot of our competitors are more of sales organizations. We're really an engineering company, or they are an engineering company. We is I tell people that we have more engineers in customer service than other people have employees from our competitors. We're on hundreds of thousands of tires. We've been road tested since 2009. And everything about it, technology, is constantly reviewed because the big fleets use it. UPS, FedEx, etc. They depend on TST. It is. I mean, I did the Quartzsite show with TST and was in their booth, and actually I was getting trained at the time, and it was amazing how many people just came by. I don't even know why we were even there, because they were doing the selling for us. I mean, so many of these people, I've had it for 12 years, I've had it for 10 years, never had a problem. Or if they did have a problem, we were right out there helping them, giving them free batteries to, in case that was there. They have a US based customer service, not a third party in a different country. It is everything about it. And I've worked with them closely. Um, I am just so impressed, and I'm not just saying it because I sell them. I'm saying I'm happy and I'm excited about selling them because I've been so impressed with how well they care, and how well they listen, and how well they take care of the customer. Which is one reason why they brought me on, because I do all these rallies, and they wanted to get as close to the customer as possible. I'm kind of their market research, realistically.
Well, and I think what's really neat about TST is how close in accuracy it is. Like it's like less than 2%, right? Like in terms of like the gauges and the readings. Like I think
It's within 1 degree. It's within 1 degree.
So,
So it's 1 degree.
let's talk about that a little bit, because most other brands are at least 10 degrees when you're talking temperature settings.
Right. It gets down to the radio. It gets down to how they talk from their sensors to whatever. So some of them use Bluetooth, and Bluetooth is just not a very. It's fine for your stereo, your phone to your stereo, but it's not really as good for that. So it's not as fast. They use a particular frequency that they have, and then some of their things are from their monitor to their sensors have been tested up to 2 miles in terms of range without a repeater. In fact, when we were we did a rally, actually, Chris De Silva, who's a rep from TST, and somebody brought in their sensor to get checked, and then went back about a mile down, and we still had it. We still got the alarm on the sensor on the display at our booth from that one sensor. We couldn't believe how accurate it was. But you use a repeater not because the two aren't in sync, but because you get other noise along the way from systems that aren't as fine tuned. And so this basically keeps on repeating it to make sure that it works. And We haven't had anybody yet at any of the things that we've done that we haven't been able to fix a problem where something has gone, and generally with either the repeater or something in the system that was overriding, getting in the way of the signal.
Yep.
And we
Yeah.
fixed
So
it.
so TPMS, like if you don't have a TPMS system, one, what are you waiting for? Honestly, there are lots of brands out there, but they're not all created equal. And as a vendor in the space, I mean, I would tell you that for me, I love our TST. It has saved us more times than I'd like to count. Probably at least 3 in the last 12 months. And so just that alone, having it go off and knowing that it stopped us from catastrophic failure. We were actually in Vernal, Utah, going up to Rock Springs, Wyoming for the next rally. And we took the gorge drive, and we knew we should not have done it. We know how hard it is on our tires, but it's such a pretty drive, and it's literally the only way to go there without going 300 miles out of the way. And so like we, took that risk. But when our TPMS went off, we pulled over to the side of the road. Our tires actually got dangerously hot, well over the recommended temperatures. And we had to
115.
sit there. Yeah, which we were 182 at one point.
Wow.
And it didn't blow, but we could see it. Like we were over on the side of the road as soon as it started, as soon as there was a
Yeah.
blow off. But the reality was we waited like an hour, with our fire extinguishers on hand just in case, because at that temperature, like you could have a fire. But our TPMS monitored that the whole time. We could sit there and watch it cool down. It would tell you that if you're riding out there with any type of vehicle, having a TPMS system on your 4 tires, as well as your tow vehicle or your motorhome and your toad, because I know enough people that have actually had their toad catch on fire. And just like Rick with the blowout on the tire, they didn't feel the toad catch on fire. They saw it on the camera and, had to disconnect.
It's also recommended you put it on your, so let's say you're a fifth wheel or a travel trailer. Like my truck has, the built-in, and I can see the pressure for my wheels on my truck. But what it doesn't do, and a lot of people don't realize this, it doesn't give you temperature. It just gives you pressure. And that's the one difference, that our TPMS will give you both. And again, what you're going to get is more on the blowout side is going to be because of the temperature issue, not because of the anything else. So that it's so important that you change all of them. And TST, for example, can handle, I think, is it 105 tires and 5 different trailers.
Yeah,
So if you
it's a
tow a
crazy
toad, you
number.
tow a toad. I mean, yeah, because again, it's commercial grade. Adding to that story that you said, so we just did a rally in Myrtle Beach, and across from us, this particular company had a different brand that they gave away with their new units, but a lot of people were very unhappy with them, and we were quite busier than we thought we were going to be. And he came back the next day after getting them and after installing them, he found after changing them that one of his stems had a leak. And he wouldn't have known that without putting EST on. And he had something else and it never told him.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to still talk about all the suspension and stuff. It's coming up, but let's talk brakes. Weight dramatically will increase your stopping distance. So when you're towing a fifth wheel or a motorhome, you need to have a solid, good braking system. You should have a brake fade on long descents. Tasha, what's the scariest brake issue you guys have ever seen?
Gosh, the scariest brake issue we've ever seen. I don't know, Jennifer.
You never went through a light or something when he hit the brake and it didn't stop in time?
I mean, all my scariest brake issues have nothing to do with RVing, but like people just not braking. I think, one of the things that I think is frightening is we went up to what's the name of that mountain in California that Matt and I were talking about going to go stay at the Thousand Trails up there, and you and Frank,
Idlewild.
yes, you guys were like, no, 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 not that it's not beautiful, but we were very early
But it's
into our
7,000 feet.
yes. And you guys were like, have you ever done that before? And we were like, no, why? What do we need to know? And then you explained it to us and we were like, oh, we're not ready for that. But we
Well,
did
so
take
Rick,
the truck.
what you probably need to understand is that Idlewild is at 7,000 feet, and in January it has snow. And in
Ooh,
the
how
state
fun.
of California, you have to
Yes.
have chains to go do that.
Yep.
And so Tasha
Yes.
had no idea
We
because it's
didn't.
California. It's sunny in
California.
California
Right.
year round.
So we did though take a day and go up to see the town and experience it. And coming back down from Idlewild was idle and
Beautiful,
wild.
breathtaking, captivating.
It was idle and wild. You know, there were many people who did take campers up, and um that was just a heart pounding experience coming down, just us in our truck with nothing on the back of it. Just that, I mean, you just had to ride the brakes the whole way down. There was no letting off.
Which
And
means your tires probably got hot too.
yes,
That is where
yes,
like a diesel does make a difference because you can put on the engine brake, and I noticed
yes.
myself that's been good. The other thing that you want to watch for, and it seems to be that a lot of the newer RVs, at least the more expensive ones, are coming through, is that they're putting disc brakes in instead of the drum brakes. You can upgrade if you have a drum brake system. There are upgrades for it, I believe, nowadays, and I know a lot of the mobile techs are putting those in, and people are just swearing that it's so much better in terms of they feel so much more comfortable braking. I know I've got discs on this and I've never had a problem yet braking on this.
I've got another story.
Do you now?
I do. Okay, we're in Florida. It's my birthday. We go and I swim with manatees and it's beautiful and it's wonderful and everything's so exquisite. And then we're leaving, we get in the truck and we're driving and we come up to the stop sign and the brakes, there are no brakes. We are just going on through. We are going through that stop sign and this truck is not stopping. And we eventually, Matt pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant that we were going to and just kind of drove around until the truck naturally slowed to a stop. And we left the truck there and we ended up getting like a Uber back to the campground. But when we had pulled into the campground and I was backing up, the brake lines had like popped and all of the brake
Oh
fluid
wow.
had come out on the ground and we didn't know what was going on. And that was frightening and very expensive. And we got it put in the garage there. And then we went down the road a little while and then it still wasn't fixed correctly. And so it went in the garage there. And then we went down the road a little while. And I don't know how many, I'm hoping Matt is listening enough that he can tell me how many stops it took, but it took a very long time before our brakes were like 100%. Like we felt like they were ready to go. But yeah, that was terrifying.
Well, on
Manatees
a
were
side
great.
note, that's one of the horrors of being on the road full time
Brakes, no.
is trying to find a good mechanic that you can trust.
Oh,
And
I mean,
Matt
do
just
you
told
know?
me it was because the brakes on the trailer were bad and they affected the brakes on
Ah,
the truck. Yes. And Jennifer knows this because Jen and Frank were 2 hours away and they drove to us to help us because
Okay, but
we were
see,
like
what you don't know about that
hyperventilating.
rescue mission was that Frank just loves Matt because it was at Crystal River. And
They have
Crystal
a sweet
River is
romance.
loaded. Well, there's Crystal River is loaded in no-see-ums. Like no see them, but they bite. They're vampire gnats.
They do.
And so Frank is super allergic to no-see-ums. And he found out the first time and only time that we've stayed at Crystal River at the campground that they were at. And so as we pull up, he's in a sweatshirt and jeans and socks, and he's got everything tucked in like there's ticks involved. And he's like got his sweatshirt like, I don't know, it's like way down around his face like this. And like he crawls underneath there and he's like, man, I really love you guys because I wouldn't do this for anybody else except maybe Rick. But you know, I mean, the reality is we would
Saved us.
do that for tons of people. But
Yeah.
but do you know how long it takes an RV to stop than a passenger vehicle with good brakes?
I
I
feel like
don't.
Just give me a
know the
number.
answer.
I do.
Well, doesn't it depend on how, are you talking?
Well, yes,
Well,
but
and how
typically,
heavy
if
it
you were
is,
both
right?
if you were going the same speed as let's just say that we were all going 35 miles an hour, how much
Yeah.
longer would it take me to stop with my fifth wheel than it would take Tasha to stop with just her truck?
Maybe I'll guess 40% longer.
What about you, Tasha?
I'm going to say 65% longer.
So actually, Rick's real close. It's actually somewhere between 30 and 50%. And so 40% is
Really?
probably right in that mid range. Yeah. But I mean, that's assuming that you're going the same speed limit. It's not
Right.
dependent on the weight. And so like if
And
we're
the
pulling
road
a 42,
conditions.
yes, and the road conditions, 100%.
The road conditions are really important.
And did you know, this is a good question, that brake controllers for towables must be properly calibrated? And Tasha, I'm feeling like you would know this because you just moved out of a travel trailer.
You know, all I can think of is the long trailer. And I feel like I know this not
Yeah.
because of having a towable
They
trailer.
didn't have a trailer. They didn't really have that automatic trailer brake.
No, but I just remember they had that crate
Yeah.
thing and it had to be
Yep.
like calibrated. I feel like that's where I learned that information is from Lucy and
Well,
Ricky.
you're supposed to pinch your
Yes,
button
the
and
little
let your
button
take your
guy.
foot. Actually, you're supposed to go like very slowly. Then you're supposed to squeeze the actuator on your trailer brake, the electric one, and make sure. And then that's supposed to stop you. And if it doesn't stop you, and almost instantaneously, you need to change I don't know, call it the gain. I'm not sure. I never. But the number needs to go up until it's set.
So on that note, this is a great time for a story. So our first year on the road, we had a 30-foot travel trailer with no slides, 6 kids, and a big E350 van. And Tasha, I think you've heard this story, but I don't know if we've told it on air. And so we had gone to Yosemite our first couple weeks on the road, and we were going to the other side of Yosemite, where it's 10,000 feet as opposed to 6. And so we're driving across Yosemite, and we did so well. It's 2013. Back then, you could actually just go in and catch a sight in Yosemite. Well, we did that. And the ranger was like, nobody ever shows up. You're the first one in line for all of these spots. Just hang out till 2:00 and we'll get you settled. I'm sure somebody will cancel. Somebody always cancels. So we went, we filled our propane, we filled our fuel tanks, both of them because we had the generator on board. And we filled all of the fresh water because they were not full hookup sites. And so we were loaded and at 10,000 feet. And everybody came in to claim their campsite that day. And we got to leave. And so we left the backside of Yosemite. And I have never seen Tioga Pass since then. If I ever see it again, it will be too soon. But we're coming out of Tioga Pass and we passed the 10,000 feet sign. And I'm like, that's going to be exciting. I had no idea how exciting that was about to get. So we're driving down Tioga Pass. And I'm so thankful for Frank's military experience because he drove like 5 tons and all sorts of things that he had to shift down gears. But we're driving down Tioga Pass, and I turn around and I said to the kids, because the camper's literally pushing us, because we had 120 fresh gallons of fresh water.
Good.
And I looked back behind me and I said, hey, everybody, fasten your seatbelts. And Frank looks over at me and he goes, we're loaded in fuel and water. So as we go over the side of this cliff, everybody will have their seatbelts on as we go down in a raging ball of fire. And at that moment, I knew we were in trouble because my husband doesn't react like that when we're in the middle of that stuff. And so, he's gripping the thing and he did stop us. However, it would be days until we could see our brakes. And when I say days, I mean like we went to another campground for 2 days and nobody had any parts. And so we drove all the way past to Carson City, Nevada. And as Frank took the brakes off of the van, they literally were dust in his hands.
Wow.
Do not do that.
Did they smell? Did you smell the smoke too?
Oh, 100%. There was just nothing. when we got to where we were going, this was the height of that fuel like boost in 2013. Gas was over $7 a gallon in Bridgeport, California, which is the next town we could go to. And then as we're driving from Bridgeport to Carson City, I look over and I'm like, we have to pass the Devil's Pass. Are you kidding me right now? Because that can't be good. All right. So keep in mind, you're going to want to keep in mind burning smell on downhill grades is not a good sign. Dust as brake dust on the inside of your tires is not a good sign. When your brakes feel soft or spongy, if your foot is hitting the floor and nothing's happening, not a good sign. Squealing, grinding, delayed stopping, or if your trailer's being pushed by your tow vehicle, probably not a good sign. Check your brakes regularly. Please don't forget. All right. Suspension and ride quality. We're going to talk about this very briefly because we've actually got Tommy coming on for a segment on this one. But stock suspension is typically a minimal. There are some brands that do better. Brinkley is doing better. They're giving you upgraded, suspension systems. Upgrades help reduce sway. They protect your RV long term, and they help with driver fatigue. How would you say suspension affects tire wear? What do you think?
Obviously, suspension is helping you with the shakes in some respects, both left, right, up, and down, and it's going to affect how well your tires are hitting the pavement, and how much weight is on the tires itself. Too much, or that's going to cause a big problem.
Absolutely. What do you think of Tasha? What do you think? How does your suspension help in a crosswind situation or when you're getting passed by trucks?
How do I think it helps when I'm being passed by trucks?
It's a trick
I've never
question.
thought about that.
Well, usually you have an air suck that happens.
No, I'm
which
trying to think
causes
about how the
left,
suspension
which
would help
causes
with that
left to right.
air tunnel that it creates. But I mean, to Rick's point, like if they're helping with the back and forth and the up and down and then, getting passed by a big rig creates that kind of friction with the air, then that would help level that and would help minimize that kind of bumpiness in your trip.
You know what I think about is when I think about suspension and how important it is, I equate it to like the old baby buggies. You remember, and how easy they were, that you could back and forth and up and down. I mean, maybe as a parent you're happy because maybe you put the kid to sleep, but you don't want that to be your RV going back and forth and up and down the way those things do.
Right.
I really have to applaud some of these companies, manufacturers, who finally understand that, part of the reason these things break so often and come apart is because of the suspension. And having
Absolutely.
a smoother ride is definitely going to make them last longer.
Let's take a minute and cut away to one of the experts. Tommy Henderson from Henderson's Lineup is going to give us some tips. So tonight we're sitting here and we have Tommy from Henderson's Lineup, and he is kind of a specialist in all things the bottom of your rig. And so Henderson's Lineup specializes in suspensions. But that being said, we're doing this episode on tires and, all of the things that go into it. Why do you need to look at your suspension in those situations?
Well, the chassis, the bottom of your rig is an area that maybe is not as often checked on as it should be. You're paying more attention to the parts that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, all the house side of things, your water, your fridge, all of that. But the chassis is really the foundation that is carrying you down the road. So we always use the example of, if your house has foundation issues, then your whole house has issues. That's a major problem. And yes, your tires are part of your suspension, and they are something that you can't just neglect. You got to make sure that they're properly aired up, you're running the correct pressure, also that you're keeping on top of maintaining them in terms of their age. A lot of people don't realize that tires do age out. Generally, in an RV application, they're going to age out before they wear out. So you want to make sure, 5 years is a recommendation on how long you can run them. But 5 to 7 is kind of that range. So you want to know where to find your decode. Sometimes that's mounted on the inside of the tire. It's kind of hard to get to, but you want to know how old your tires are, what shape they're in, are you running the correct pressure in them. Also, just looking at their wear patterns too, because that can indicate you've got an alignment issue too. If you're getting abnormal wear, run your hand across it. If you feel more resistance in one direction than the other, or if you're not getting even wear across the surface of the tire, that can indicate an alignment issue. And why is that a problem? Well, one, remember what I said about aging out your tires before you wear them out. That may not be the case if you've got a major alignment issue. You may actually wear them out first, so you're cutting a lot of lifespan off the tires. Also, just more rolling resistance going down the road. If you're running too much tow, that's just hurting your fuel economy, more resistance, and it could hurt your stability too. If you're towed out a lot, that can make it tend to wander more. So many different reasons not to forget your tires and not to forget your whole suspension system.
And what would you say is the thing that makes you realize that you might have a potential suspension system failure or challenge even? What are some of those telltale signs?
Yeah, I mean, if your coach all of a sudden starts sitting lower, or coach or trailer fifth wheel, that could indicate, especially we see this on trailers, fifth wheels, the leaf springs can break. If you're seeing some abnormal tire wear, if you feel just unstable going down the road, that could be a sign of a suspension issue. It could be some other things at play as well. Sometimes just the way say if you got a travel trailer, the way it's loaded, you have enough ton weight, do you not? That can affect the stability.
Yep.
Lots of different factors at play there. But yeah, if you're not feeling in control going down the road, you've seen a sudden change in the way it pulls or the way it drives, sudden change in ride height, loud banging noise at some point, as you're towing it or driving it. A lot of times too, with on a trailer, we have a hard time making corners. So if you were to hit a curb or something, a lot of times that can throw your trailer out of alignment. There's not a lot of strength laterally in those a lot of times, so it doesn't take too much to get them knocked out of alignment. So that's something a lot of people don't think about too, is just making sure that their trailer, their fifth wheel is properly aligned.
Very true. And a lot of people don't even realize that hitting a pothole can affect a much bigger portion of their rig as they're driving down the highway, depending on how fast they're going. So
Yeah.
how does speed play into that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going over a very rough, bumpy road, certainly better to slow down, not be pushing it too much. Issues also will reveal themselves more at different speeds. Like a lot of times, a vibration issue, there may be a certain speed where it kind of comes in at. So that's something to pay attention to as well. If you're like, oh, at this certain speed, I feel this problem and I don't feel it elsewhere, that could be a balance issue on tire, drive line, something along those lines.
And then if anyone had a question for you about their suspension specifically, what kind of rigs do you work on?
Sure. So in our shop, we work on all manner of RVs. So primarily motorhomes, but we do work on travel trailers, fifth wheels as well. We do align them here in the shop. And on fifth wheels, we do a lot of the MORRIDE IS suspension installs, but also maintenance on those as well. Motorhomes, yeah, all manner of motorhomes, anywhere from small gas vans all the way up to diesel pushers. If you can't make it to our shop, you can contact our Super Steer outside parts sales side, not just to buy parts, but also just to provide helpful input. We really do pride ourselves on trying to give people information and help them solve problems. And a lot of times we'll tell somebody, if they tell us, my motorhome's really unstable in the wind, or it rides really rough. One of the first things we'll say is, have you weighed your coach, that you're running the correct tire pressure for the weight you're carrying, and you know that your weight distribution is ideal. A lot of times people don't know that, say, if they're too light on the front axle of their coach, that can make it less stable in the wind or when getting passed by trucks. Think of like a pickup truck with a full load of firewood or gravel on the back. That steering gets awful pushy and light.
Yeah.
That's the concept with motorhomes.
That's very cool. So if people had questions, how would they find you?
Sure. So they can contact us by phone, 888-898-3281. Our website is supersteerparts.com, and you can email us sales, that's SALES, at supersteerparts.com.
Awesome. All right. So do you think that RV owners are running heavier than they realize?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Dawn keeps on telling us, my wife, that we're not running heavy, and I kind of think that we are. But it's kind of just things like I'm not going to check, but I need to. We next time we go to a rally, we're going to have ourselves weighed and find out. But yeah, it's so easy to, because really, if you look at what the manufacturer gives you compared to, for like 2,000 pounds, you think it's a lot, but really it's not.
It really is not. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, think about it this way. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were really surprised whenever we were at Bash 3 years ago and got weighed there. And we found out that we were over. We were assuming that they were going to come back and say, oh, you're real close. You've got, 100 pounds left or something. We were waiting to find out how much weight we had left so that we could determine what to do with solar. And it was like, we can't do anything with solar because we need to figure out how to immediately relieve the rig of weight. It was dramatically, it was a big number. It was a big number.
And how overweight were you? Because you didn't know.
It was a lot. It was a
She's
lot,
you
Jennifer.
embarrassed?
Matt just told me no. Matt said no.
Well, I think you'd be real surprised to find out that there's a lot of people that run overweight, very much like that, especially full timers. So many RVs are actually leaving the factory with very little cargo capacity already. So that's where one of the things that, so GVWR, gross combined vehicle weight ratio. There's a whole mathematical equation that you need to know. And, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure it out, but it is a little bit trickier. And most people don't realize things like the people in the cab of the truck matter in that situation. All your cargo matters. Your
The
roof.
fuel is so important too.
Yes, your roof matters, meaning that, if you're using a different company, some roofs are much more heavier than others. Excess heat and tires can create what almost is an illusion of extra weight. Suspension stress causes premature failure. And so many of us aren't carrying in the right spot either. So like so many people will carry all their heavy stuff at the very back of the trailer. Tasha, do you know why you don't want to do that?
Because that's not where you do that at, Jen.
But why?
Because
I'm in the room hiding, and you called on her.
Because I know this, but I don't know this. Because I've learned this, but I can't recall it. It's because it has to do with where where you want it to sit on the axles and where you want it to sit near where the actual weight distribution happens down at the bottom, and then you want it on the bottom. You don't want it up high, and you want it near the front, not near the back, because the place where you're joined with your truck is where it's stronger. Back at the back there's nothing back there helping that. And up at the top, there's nothing up there helping that. It's physics, Jennifer. It's physics.
It is physics.
Engineering.
They say a fifth wheel is better than the bumper pull because you're putting weight on the hitch, and you're not doing that. I have somebody who I know is considered an expert, and he was telling me that when I had the Imagine, that was probably the most I could get for a bumper pull, and anything more heavy than that would not be a good thing. It would actually hurt the truck and hurt the trailer.
Yeah. Well, I think that people don't realize, like that. I say it all the time. You don't know what you don't know until you have to know it. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people find out they're overweight when they get into a car accident, and the accident wasn't their fault, but it's their fault because they're overweight, and they're dropped by insurance. If you're in a diesel pusher, maybe you don't have the same concerns about weight
Right.
that maybe somebody in a fifth wheeler or travel trailer has. But if you're in a gasser, you might also still have those problems. So knowing all of that information is super, super important.
I'm just surprised they haven't invented Manjaro for the RV yet.
Yeah, right. All right. So let's talk about perfect tires, great brakes. We've got that, right?
Yep.
But how many of you have changed your bearings on the side of the highway?
Well, I wouldn't change them if they were on fire. So let's put it that way. But I am getting them changed because we've had this for about 7 months, and we've been back and forth to California, and we're getting them changed actually next week.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, if you've not thought about this, most people don't even think about it till it's too late and there's white smoke pouring out the side of your tire. And so your wheel bearings, what?
Oh, it's just a, oh,
What?
don't do that. They're not that hard
Oh,
to
we've done that
change.
multiple times. Yeah,
I
we've done that
know.
multiple. So back when we had a chase vehicle, it was much
Saying
easier to
change
spot it.
your bearings. You just need to get them repacked.
Well, we do that too.
The
I
packing is
mean,
easy.
Right.
we still do.
There's a thingy
Packing's
for it.
easy. Yep. And you know, I actually had a minute to talk to Ashley at a Performance Trailer Braking. Okay, so we're here with Ashley at Performance Trailer Braking. And so I've known Ashley for probably 3 or 4 years now. You're at all the rallies. Let's start with just what is Performance Trailer Braking?
Performance Trailer Braking, we are a parts supplier for aftermarket upgrades in terms of disc brake conversions, suspensions, axles, and getting yearly service work done on your bearings and existing brakes if you happen to have drum still or if you've already upgraded to disc.
Awesome. And so, like, do you do conversions like that at rallies like this?
Absolutely. I know you can't hear too much in the background, but we actually have a team out there doing a job right now as we're talking.
That's fantastic. Let's talk bearings for just a second, because I think so many people don't realize how often you should do maintenance on them.
Yeah.
How often would you say you need to like repack your bearings?
So per manufacturer specifications, regardless if it's Dexter, Lippert, Kurt, all of them, it's once a year or 10 to 15,000 miles, whichever comes first.
So if I'm an RVer, I should do it once a year?
At a minimum.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's awesome.
Yep.
So let's talk through the parts on your table a little bit.
Okay.
Can you tell me kind of what you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a display model. It is not the actual hub rotor because we have a nice lightweight one, so we don't have to carry the big 40-pounder around.
That's smart.
Right. But this is what the disc brake would look like. Obviously not plastic. And then these are our steel lines that we use that we run from the actuator back to the calipers on each one of these hub rotors. That's how the fluid gets pushed when you actually apply your brakes. We've got some of the hoses. These are the ones that connect to said caliper that these steel lines connect to. And these are at each wheel and they're flexible because obviously there's potholes on the road and we need to account and absorb for that. So you need a little bit of movement at the caliper so you don't blow a line. I'll come back to those in a second, but we got some bearings that we were just talking about and what they look like and things that we see out on the road. We've got some shackle kits, the common skinny one for manufacturing that has a tendency to break and the holes wallow out. And then the upgraded one that is double the size of the skinny ones. Every trailer, no matter the size, should at least upgrade from the small to the heavy duty shackles. It makes a world of difference. And then those are some of the equalizer types. We're a distributor for Moride. And then this is a sample of half of a cross member. A cross member goes from spring hanger to spring hanger on driver's side to passenger side. It reinforces those spring hangers so that they don't bend, break, snap, concave, expand, any of that on you, which also reinforces the frame. To jump back over here, these are the seals that actually go on the back side of the hub rotor and hold that inner bearing in. These are the common culprit that if people use the Zerk that's on the end of the spindle, and they're like, oh, I'll just shoot some grease in there and my bearings are greased. Well, if this is already blown, that grease that you just pushed in there now just went all over your brakes. So do not use the Zerk on the end of your spindle, especially with drum setup, because you have no idea where that grease is actually going. And you could be putting grease in your brakes.
Do you have safety tips for somebody that maybe loses their brakes on the road?
Call me right away and we'll talk through it. It could be a lot of things. It could be an electrical component. It could be grease in there. It could be the magnet malfunctioned. If it's disc brakes already, it could be a blockage in the hydraulic line. It could be a rubber line was too close to the tire and it rubbed and now you have hydraulic fluid coming out. So there could be a couple different things depending on what you have. So yeah, give me a call. Whether you're a customer of ours or not, call us. We want to help and support the RV community as a whole, not just our customers. So please give us a call. We will help you regardless.
Okay, so how do they get a hold of you?
Telephone number 405-626-7009. We are a small family-run company, and by family, we've all been installing for many years under the previous owners, and a bunch of us installers recently bought the company. So we are family because we've been out here, blood, sweat, tears, smiles, all of it for many years with you guys. So yeah, we're a small company, and we answer the phones and answer emails, especially if you call and then send a text and say it's an emergency. Even on the weekends, we try to get back to you as quick as possible. You can also visit our website at performancetrailerbraking.com or send an email at info@performancetrailerbraking.com.
Okay, let's talk rally schedule because I know you've got a full season.
Yes, ma'am.
If people were going to other rallies this season, not just the HDT rally, where might they find you this year?
Well, we do grain design. We support Brinkley. We support Forest River, Jayco, KZ, Frogs. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, so sorry if I forgot you. But we have over 50 rallies that we attend as a company. There are 9 authorized independent installers. What that means is they don't work for the company. They get paid directly at time of service. So that is a separate piece, but we all work together. So there's a whole network of us and we support each other. And that's how we're able to attend so many rallies because we have people positioned all over the country. An easy way, a new add-on to our website, if you go to the installers section and click any of one of our photos, you can see our map of where we're about to be for the remainder of the year.
That's awesome. Great
Yes.
weekend.
Yes, easy way to track us.
Yeah. So don't forget to check out Performance Trailer Braking. Ashley's a wealth of information. I've known her for a bunch of years. The reality is all of their techs, just like our teams, are the same way. You know, they're very well versed in what they're doing, or they wouldn't be part of this team.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bearings are so important. You should actually repack your bearings typically between 10 and 12,000 miles, at least every year if you're an RVer. And it's kind of not a whatever comes first. The reality is you just have to be mindful about it. So you want to look for excessive heat at the wheel hub and don't touch it. You know, have a fire extinguisher handy. Grease leaking from your hub is, you know, something that is kind of one of those telltale signs, or a vibration that you maybe can't explain. That's the time to call out an RV tech. If you're not comfortable doing it yourself, find somebody that, you know, specializes in that. Performance Trailer Braking is one of those companies. There's quite a few of them across the country. Inspect the seals when you're servicing, and don't assume it's fine. Don't assume it's on, you know, because it could be fine or it could be on fire, and there's a big difference between those two. You know, but that's one of those unseen areas.
I mean, one of the things I recommend is that if you do have an RV tech coming for something other problem, you're crazy not to have them also just do a quick check. They're already there. You've already paid money. So you're going to pay maybe an extra $150 for them to take the hour to look around. But then, you know, you've got peace of mind and you know there's a problem or not.
And that's super, super important. All right. So there is so much packed into this one episode. Tires, brakes, suspensions, TPMS. It's not exactly fun, but it's definitely the side that keeps us rolling, literally. And, you know, stuff like this is, you know, important. If you've ever experienced something going down the road that's caused an issue, a hiccup, a bump, if you have a story, it's one of those crazy campfire stories. We'd love to hear about it. It can be a tire story. It can be a suspension story. It can be a why you upgraded your suspension before there was an issue story, because that's really the smart time to do it. Not repacking your bearings on the side of the road before you go across to Mobile, Alabama, right before the bridge.
It sounds a little too personal there, Jen.
It was very specific.
We drove across that bridge a bunch of times that day, actually. But yeah, so, I mean, there's so many things that we should be mindful of. So from blowouts to braking distance to ride quality and suspension, this is a complete guide to what's happening underneath your rig. I just want to take a minute to thank Rick for coming on today and for Tasha to putting up with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Learn to RV the podcast. Thanks for popping in. See you around the campfire.